Welcome to season 2 of Crafting for Profit Live. We're so excited to kick off our second season of the podcast. And this year, we're going to do things a little bit differently. So, we learned a lot during our first season, and we've decided to pre record our podcast episodes instead of filming them live.
We made this decision because, frankly, it was stressful to record podcasts live every 2 weeks. Stressful on us and stressful on our podcast guests. And if this podcast has taught us anything, it's that we should be doing things in our business that bring us less stress, not more.
So, this one is pre recorded. But if you are watching on YouTube, we are going to chat along with you in the comment section. So we will still be available to answer your questions if you join us during that live time on Thursdays on YouTube. And then we'll still have it on the podcast on Mondays. So nothing changes there as well. So feel free to ask any questions if you're joining us for the YouTube Live. And if you have random questions, then you always have the form in the description below the video or in the podcast notes.
Today, we're kicking off chatting with you about how we are preparing for this coming year in our businesses. We're hoping that some of our ideas might be helpful for you no matter what type of small crafty business you have.
Why is this so important? So, a couple of reasons. The first one is to avoid burnout. And quite frankly, we talk a ton in this podcast about avoiding burnout because that's a common problem among small business owners. So, planning can help you create a balance and it helps you ensure that time for rest. You're going to plan in those times for rest to ensure that you don't burn yourself out this year. And I especially find that's very important. If I don't plan it in, literally, I have a reminder on my computer the first day of the month to plan rest into my month. Literally every single month, first of the month.
It has to happen because if it doesn't, I will work myself to the bone. I will just continue to work. All right, number 2 here is it also gives you a way to stay flexible. So, yes, we are planning, but we are going to plan in a flexible way so that we have structure, but it also leaves a room for like if we need adjustments because sticking to a plan that's just so highly structured that you don't have room to pivot or make changes, that can be just as stressful as not having a plan at all.
And quite frankly, this is one of the reasons that we are pre recording these podcast episodes is so we can stay flexible with our podcast. So we are following our own advice right now. The third reason that it's so important to plan your year is to boost profitability. So, using a plan will help you focus on profitable areas and avoid all those wasted efforts. And there's a ton of wasted efforts. You can go down a ton of different just paths that don't lead you to your final goal. And I find that if I look at it at least once a year, what paths am I going down? And oh gosh, I messed up. I am totally getting off of the topic here and going away from my main goal, and course correcting is something I constantly do.
Yeah, I think it's so easy for us to be sort of, squirrel, like and looking in 10 different directions. And there's so many cool things you may want to make or different platforms you may want to try or all of these different things. But are they helping us reach our goals? And so planning for our year is going to help us kind of keep our eye on the prize and be able to not get distracted quite so easily.
Let's start off on this planning journey. And the first thing you're going to want to do is to use data to plan effectively. So, data is going to be helpful for you. And you may be like, I don't like numbers. It's okay. You're going to like them in this case because it's going to help you be more productive and more profitable.
I think sometimes as creative people, we think, I don't like numbers. I don't like numbers. I was an English major specifically because it had very few numbers in it. And so I feel like we are not necessarily naturally inclined toward numbers as creative people. And that's totally fine. We are all inclined to, our different strengths and weaknesses. However, it's really hard to plan effectively if you don't have any data. It was really hard to make business choices without looking at the numbers. Because if you're just going off vibes, you're just not going to get as far. Because sometimes the vibes lead us wrong. We really need to understand by looking at what we sold in the past year and what we didn't sell. We need to look and see what worked, what didn't. We really need to dig in to those numbers, whether it be sales or social media numbers or all of these different areas where numbers exist. Just start to do a little bit of a deep dive into those numbers and be like, is this working for me? So for example, I just don't do a lot of Instagram anymore because it's not working for me. Maybe if I had more time and energy to put in like a full court press effort into Instagram, I could make it work for me, but I don't have that capability in my business right now. And stressing about it and trying to create content for Instagram is bringing me very low return on investment for the time and energy that I put into it. So I feel like using the data of seeing that like Instagram is driving very little of my traffic, very few of my sales means that I can just ignore it more easily than I would be able to ignore it when I have all the voices in my head saying, you need to do social media, you need to do social media. I feel like it's just one of those things. I looked at the numbers and I decided, yeah, I don't need to do that right now.
I feel like a great way to go about this is to literally write down everything you do or all of your paths, let's say, and look at each of those. Analyze the data if you have it. And the bottom line question here is it working or not working? Is it growing your business? Is it making you money? If it's a no, then it's going on the no list. And if it's a yes, it's going on the yes list. And what you're going to find is something it's a fancy term, Pareto principle. Basically, is that 20% of your effort is generating 80% of your profitability or your results in this business. So 20% of those efforts. So it's a very small percentage. That's the part that's working in your business. And those are general percentages, but you're going to find a very small percent of what you do is actually working for you. And it doesn't matter how many times I do this. I feel like every single time it comes down to a little bit of what I'm doing is equating to all of my money.
Yeah, it's really interesting because there are things I will spend a ton of time on and then realize that really made me no money. Why? Why did I spend that time? And every once in a while, there's a reason. Like it brought me a lot of joy and I needed joy or, other things like that. But generally, if you're running a business, you want to focus on profitability. You want to focus on what is making you money. So why are you doing things that are not making you money? Yes, maybe social media is somewhere where you need to put your energy, but if you're putting your energy there, maybe you need to put more energy there and let go of some of the other things. So if I wanted to focus on Instagram, for example, and really build that up and do it well, I would have to let go of other things I'm doing in my business. So it's one of those things where you just really need to look and say, what is making me money?
Sometimes these things you tend to think, well, that works for someone else, like Instagram, like social media. That is really working for this person. It should work for me. And so you tend to hold on to it for that reason because you think it should work for you. And if there's just one thing I've learned in all this is that not everything that works for someone else, if it works for Corey, it might not work for me. If it works for Jennifer Maker, it might not work for Corey and I. So it is just like not everything is going to work for you. And sometimes you just have to accept it and let it go instead of just continuing to, pump all of your effort into this thing that just doesn't work for your business.
I mean, I will give you a personal example here. So I have been blogging, I've been writing about how to make crafts since professionally since 2013. I quit my job. I was like, I'm doing this. And up until like 2 years ago, that was it. I was doing great. And then Google decided to hate me. Thanks, Google. And my blog, that particular part of my business, has basically tanked. And it's been extremely difficult because that's my baby, right? That's the thing I've been holding on to. It was why I got into this in the beginning because, like, with a blog, you can totally sit there in your pajama pants with no makeup on, just writing and taking photos. You never have to be on camera. You never have to do a stupid TikTok dance. You never have to go on a podcast. You never have to do all of these things. And I found that really comforting. However, when I was looking at the numbers this last year, I was like, you know what? I'm still writing blog posts. Why? Why am I still writing blog posts? And it was really hard for me to let go. I mean, my blog still exists and I will still write blog posts here and there occasionally, but for the most part, I'm just kind of letting it ride, letting it do what it's going to do. And I had to grieve it a little bit and say, okay, this is not serving me anymore, even though it is the thing that I built from the ground up and I'm incredibly proud of it. It's just not working for me right now. And I need to focus my energy elsewhere.
An opposite example, something that I found did work for me. So I jumped into sublimation very early, teaching people how to do sublimation. So for me, my products are my YouTube videos, right? So if a YouTube video is popular, that means it's doing well. Jumped into sublimation fairly early, and I realized that those videos did way better because I had less competition. So it was something that was working for me that not a lot of other people were doing, especially in our space. And it really did work for me. So for me, letting go of some of that other things I was doing. So doing fewer cricket crafts, doing fewer crafts that didn't, involve a machine and inserting more of that sublimation stuff into my business helped my business grow at that point. And so I also feel like on the opposite end, you can find things that are working for you. The competition may not be doing them. Maybe you're a leader in that area. You can focus your 20% on that and let go of some of the other things.
Yeah, I mean, in my crafting business, so in Chapter and Craft, my little shop that I run, I really thought I had some great products, and I was shocked to see what did well and what didn't. I did not think I would be spending most of my time designing stickers, and yet here I am, a sticker person. I sell other things as well, but stickers have done so well in my shop, way more than I thought this would just be like one of my many avenues, but it's turned out that this is like the number one thing that I sell. And I have other products that sell as well, but stickers seem to be the thing that caught on with most people, which makes sense because it's a bookish shop and people can put stickers on their Kindles or their water bottles or, those sorts of things. So it makes sense that stickers are kind of the thing. But it was one of those things where I was like, okay, we're pivoting harder into stickers because these are doing really well and I can keep it all within my niche and it will work really well.
And I do want to mention one thing here about putting all your eggs in one basket. So we're filming this on January 14th, and TikTok is scheduled to go away on January 19th of 2025. That means all those people that put all their eggs, literally every egg they have, into the TikTok basket, so their entire business was TikTok based, may lose their entire business on January 19th. So I would caution you, even though we're talking about focusing on less to make more in your business, be cautious about putting all of those eggs in the same basket. Be sure to diversify a little bit and not rely on one thing. So if those TikTok people, like I'm going to use that as an example, if those TikTok people have been encouraging people to sign up for their email list for all of these years that they've been on TikTok, they would still have that email list. That's something they own, and they could pivot to another platform. They could pivot to their own website. They could pivot at this point and still be making money within that business.
Yeah, I think it's really important also when it comes to trends. We talked about this in our last episode of 2024, that trends in general, like you can hop on a trend, but then know when to hop off as well. Those sorts of things that you want to make sure that you're not throwing all your eggs into a trendy basket necessarily. I think people tend to do that. So it's, again, just finding more places for all of those eggs. I mean, this podcast is one of our baskets that we both have. Crafting camps is another basket that we both have, but we have all sorts of other baskets that some that don't overlap. And the more you can kind of diversify without running yourself into the ground, I think the better off you'll be, especially in this changing landscape with media and those sorts of things. Like, don't build your entire business on Instagram. Make sure you're trying to build that email list or have a Facebook group or just some other way to contact your people. Because if tomorrow Instagram goes away, you want to be able to make sure that you can continue to run your business.
Right. So now you have that data and you have those list of things that are working for you. It is time to set some goals for 2025. So, what are we looking for here? We're looking for clear goals, and you want them to provide focus and direction throughout the year, not just at the beginning. So, you want to make these goals like long term goals. Maybe you shorten some of it, but you do want to make sure that it's going to be long term and you can kind of focus on it throughout the year.
And there are lots of types of goals we can set as business owners. Of course, we can set revenue goals. I wouldn't necessarily make that your only goal, though, because this is going to be a difficult year, I think. There is a lot that could be changing just within the United States, I feel, in this particular upcoming year here in 2025. And I don't know what the economy is going to do. There are just so many different things that could happen in this next year. And I think if we only set one big revenue goal and then we don't meet it, we feel like we've failed. So, in addition to having revenue goals, which you can break out into smaller goals, as we'll talk about, you could also have product goals. You want to launch this many new designs. You want to expand certain product lines. You want to test different materials or colors or, all of these different things. You can make those into goals that are much more achievable and can move your business forward. So, you're making new products, you're testing new products, all of these things. Those can be goals as well that can be a little bit more realistic necessarily than maybe having revenue goals. There can also be marketing goals, growing your email list, growing your social media, those sorts of things. And then, of course, we have personal goals, which Angie and I are huge fans of. We're always going to tell you to take personal time. We understand that it can be really difficult, especially if you have a full-time job and you're running your business on the side. But, whether it's to prioritize your family, take a vacation, learn a new skill, all of these things, you do want to have personal goals built in here as well.
What I usually do is take into account the data that I just went through, what's working, what's not, and then take what's working and make myself goals for those. And I tend to not be very motivated by certain types of goals. So I have to literally hunt for a way to frame the goal in my mind to motivate myself. So if I say I'm going to increase my social media following by 5,000 people, a lot of times that doesn't motivate me because what did those 5,000 people mean? Does that mean I'm going to make more money, or does that just mean that I can say I have 6,000 followers on Instagram? Like, what does that mean? So I often have to break it down towards motivating for me. So perhaps those followers turn into clicks on my website. Clicks on my website is something that I could see being beneficial, right? So if I can drive them to my website, that could be a beneficial goal for me. So maybe increasing the clicks on my website instead might be a goal that motivates me. So I do want to be sure that it motivates you yourself. And what motivates me may not motivate Corey.
Yeah, I feel like what motivates the two of us is actually quite different, which is always really funny. And what might motivate you might be different than what motivates both of us. And you really have to find that thing that is going to push you to be better, push you to reach your goals. Because sometimes you'll set a goal and it's just not achievable too. And so I think you should have multiple goals in across different areas so that you are achieving some of your goals. I never set necessarily the intention to reach all of my goals, which probably makes me a bad influential speaker. However, I feel like being flexible and being able to pivot and being able to say, okay, you know what? This isn't working. I'm going to start doing this. That means that goal's out the window, and that's fine. But I'm going to make a new goal at this thing that's working really, really well. So having that flexibility and not staying so tethered to what you set, at the beginning of January can be a good way to be less stressed about your goals going throughout the year.
And then we're going to encourage you to break those goals down. And we're going to use another fancy term here, and we're going to call it the SMART goals framework. So, SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So you want your goals to meet all of those. So you want them to be very specific. Like I was saying, it should be very specific. So I'm going to grow my social media following by this much, clicks to my website by this much, email list by this much. And that could be a number or a percentage, your revenue by this month. I'm going to launch this many new products. So it should be very specific. So basically, when you reached it or that you're getting close, it's something to motivate you.
Yes, and of course you want them measurable, which when they're specific, they should generally be measurable. It needs to be something you can count, physically count, right? So if you are like, I want to increase my, let's just say I want to increase my social media following by 5,000 people. 5,000 people is measurable. You can actually measure it. But if you're just like, I want to increase my social media following, you can't measure that really. I mean, you can measure it from 1 to a million, right? Like all of that is growth, but you really want like a number to make it measurable.
And then you want them to be achievable. So we are not talking about, I am not going to gain 1 million followers in a year. It's not going to happen. So you do want to be able to achieve these goals. And why is that? You want to be able to celebrate when you are reaching these milestones. If you end the year and haven't reached not even one of your goals, you are going to be very discouraged by this business. So these goals are to grow your business, yes, but they're also to motivate you. And there's nothing that is less motivating than feeling like you've failed. Feeling like a failure can be the detriment to everything I do. So do make sure that the goals are achievable. I feel like you should need to reach a little bit and, at least work for the goals a little bit. Like if I was to say I'm going to grow my Instagram by 2 people, might not be a goal. But if I was to say that I'm going to grow it by 500 people, for me, that might be an achievable goal. That is a little bit of a reach. So be sure to think of it that you need to reach a little bit, but they should be achievable.
You can also want your goals to be relevant to your business. So if I added that I wanted to get 5 guinea pigs, that's great. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable. It's not relevant to my business. It just has nothing to do with guinea pigs. So that's kind of an extreme example, but you do want your goals to be relevant to, what you want to achieve over the year, as well as think about that Pareto principle again. Goals within that 20% are going to do so much better than goals in the 80%. So take a look at those 20% of things that you do that are bringing in 80% of your money and try and stick your goals in there and they will be really relevant to your business.
And then finally, the T in SMART is time bound. So you do want to put a time measurement on these. And they don't always have to be like by the end of the year, I want to. I tend to do things like first quarter, I would like to do this goal. Second quarter would be this one. And that way I'm not overwhelmed in first quarter. I tend to list all my goals and then just sort of race and sprint for the finish line in first quarter. But if you say first quarter, I'm going to work on this one, second quarter, this one, if you map those out, they're time bound. However, you're sort of piecing them out throughout the year as well.
Yeah, you can do different goals throughout the year. You can break down a bigger goal into smaller, sub goals. So you're like, okay, each month I want to get 100 new Instagram followers is a lot easier than saying I want to get 1,200 Instagram followers in a year. Because if you don't get any in the beginning because you weren't really paying attention to that year end goal, and then you get to November and you're like, well, crap, I still need 1,198 people to meet this goal. That becomes a much more difficult goal to reach.
And that brings us to our next point about staying adaptable and flexible for all those unforeseen challenges, new trends, and don't abandon your goals just because there's a new trend. Like the goal is relevant because you've set it, right? You've looked at the data, you've decided on these goals. They are relevant to you. So don't just abandon them because some new trend comes along or TikTok's going away. If your goal had to do with TikTok, perhaps you adapt that. What did the goal with TikTok, what did that have to do with your business? And can you adapt that to another social media at this point? So maybe you adapt it to Instagram Reels and adapt the goal, but the goal is still there, I guess. So that would be an example of being flexible, even though unforeseen circumstances, a social media platform goes away.
Yeah, I feel like the name of the game is pivoting. I feel like we pivot a lot, whether it's just a slight pivot or if it's a big pivot. We've both been doing this a very long time. And did we ever think we'd be doing a podcast? No. Did we ever think we'd be running crafting camps? No. These are all things that at some point we got an idea about and, we pivoted into them without necessarily saying we're not going to do the other stuff now. Like I said, it took me several years to say, okay, my blog's not working for me. I need to set it aside or whatever else you're doing. So I think it's one of those things where you need to be adaptable, but also keep that goal in mind. Like we're running a business, right? We need to reach our goals.
So, funny story. At some point many years ago, someone mentioned podcasting to me, and I literally said, there's no way you can make a podcast about crafting. Literally said that. So never say never.
Never say never, because if you'd asked me even like a year ago, well, no, I guess we've been doing this a year now. So it would have been over a year ago. Do you want to do a podcast? I'd be like, I'm never doing a podcast. I can't talk for an hour about stuff. And here we are. All right. So now once you kind of have goals, you've been thinking about all of this, we are going to build a calendar. We are going to put it on paper or digitally, however you want to do that. And we are going to start by including, before we start mapping out how we want to reach all of our goals, we need to plan the major events in our year. This is something I'm apparently terrible at because things happen and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm going here for a week and I totally don't have any content planned for while I'm gone. This is just something that I struggle with a lot. So get a yearly calendar. Maybe you can see the whole year in one big go and start to include all of the events that you're doing, travel, personal commitments, business milestones, all of these things. Like I always forget that at some point in the beginning of the year, I'm going to have to take several days to like sit down and get all my taxes together, like every year. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm so behind because I spent so many days doing taxes. It's not like taxes don't happen every single year, Corey. Like you got to sit down and do your taxes. So put that on the calendar. And then I feel like that way you have a better overview of the time you have to actually work on your business.
And I feel like this could even include things that like I spent 15 years of my life in the fall. My son was committed to football. And if you're a football mom, it takes up a lot of time. It could even include things like that. So blocking out a little more time in the fall for personal reasons, because you know that football is going to maintain your Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the entire fall season. So just blocking out things like that, even if you don't know exactly what's going to happen during football season, you know that football season's going to happen. That's one example.
I feel like that's really good because you might think, okay, I'm going to work 2 hours in the evening and then football season shows up.
No, you're not.
You're not working 2 hours in the evening. Are you crazy? No, you're going to football games with your kid. So those are just things you need to get those on the calendar first because you can't plan around everything else. You want those things to be important first.
And I feel like the tool you use does not matter, and everyone's different. You could use Google Calendar. You can use a physical planner. You can have a huge wall calendar where you can see the entire year at a time. There's project management apps. There are tons of different tools, and the tool doesn't matter necessarily. It's like whatever works for you. And if a free one works for you, then that's great. Google Calendar is a great option, I feel like.
Yeah, I use Google Calendar, although I really think I do wanna get a full year calendar so I can, like, just at a glance see what's coming up because I'm going to Puerto Rico in 2 weeks, and in my mind, it's still, like, 4 months away. No, I'm leaving on vacation very soon, and I need to get my act together.
I
So,
always feel like one of those calendars on the wall. I totally need one, just like the full year on the wall. I just need a space in my like somewhere, craft room, studio, something with a whole wall of calendars.
one of those giant ones, right, where I need one of those because we do a lot over here. So for like our team, if we were making a calendar for our team for planning goals, which we sat down a little bit and we need to sit down some more and make more goals for this year. But we already know this year when all of our events are going to be. And we have backed those up with, okay, so if the event is this date, tickets will go on sale on this date, which means we need to be doing speaker information on this date, which means we need to be pitching sponsors on this date. So we have backed up all of those dates. So those all already exist on our calendars. We have our podcast schedule already mapped out. We have our product launches mapped out. For me, I will need to put craft fairs. And if I'm putting a craft fair on the calendar, that means that at least a week before that craft fair for me, I need to be making products. That is not a time I'm going to be doing other things. I'm going to be head down making products. Depending on what kind of business you're running and what you need to do, this is when to put them all on the calendar.
It even could be, I mean, product launches, yes, but it could even be leading up to that product launch. Like, when do you want to start? Do you want to start teasing it? You could start putting those types of things on your calendar because I am the queen of forgetting the product launch steps. Just make the product and put it out there, Angie. No, maybe if it would be better to have a marketing plan. So when do I need to start teasing that I'm making a new product? When do I, do I email people first? Who do I give an exclusive look to? And on what date does that exclusive look go up? And I feel like putting those in also helps to keep you on track and accountable for those product launches. Because if you say on this date, these people are going to get a sneak peek of this product, you are going to make whatever product it is by that date.
I am such a sucker for accountability. I will tell people, like, this is launching on this day because I am so responsible that I will be like, I cannot disappoint people. So I will get it out by that day. So say you're like, even if you're just planning it, you're like, okay, guys, new launch coming on April 2nd. You're like, I still don't even know what it is, but you're going to launch something on April 2nd. And because you put it out there, you put it out there to your customers, to your followers, to whoever. Now you are sort of bound to do it. That works really well for me. I don't know if it works well for other people, but I know
It works really well
money.
for me. That's what I wanted to mention it because, like, if you need accountability and you're like, how do I get accountability with the Etsy shop? I'm working for myself. Just tell people that something's coming on a certain date, and all of a sudden you're in a panic.
It's a really, really great motivator. Is it the healthiest motivator? Probably not, but it works really, really well. One other thing that I want to talk about is not forgetting prep and reset days. I wasn't quite sure what to call these, but plan for, we talked a little bit about prepping for big, events, or maybe you're going on vacation. Like the Friday before I go on vacation, I'm not working, I'm packing. I'm packing the day before I leave. And when I get home, the last thing I want to do is like jump right back into work. So I need a day to unpack and do the 77 loads of laundry that my children have somehow, come up with out of their carry-on bag. And I need to be able to reset my house. I need to go grocery shopping, those sorts of things. So if you are looking at your calendar, Angie and I almost always take the day off after we do one of our big events. Our events are usually Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You will not hear from us on Sunday. We are dead. We are dead to the world that day, not doing anything. And generally on that Monday, we are also very lazy and not doing much because it takes a lot of work to put one of these events on. So maybe if you're doing 2 craft fairs in a weekend, take Monday off if you can, or at least take some time to rest, take some time to reset, to put everything away that you took out for the craft fair. All of these things, just plan them into your schedule so that you're not wondering where all your time went because you were doing taxes or unpacking or all of that.
All right. Are we ready for a commercial break?
Let's do it.
All right. So our commercial break today is very exciting. So we have launched Sublimation Craft Kit. And first of all, I want to start this off by saying this is a very limited time offer and it goes away on January 31st, 2025. So if you're watching this at any point after that, you will not be able to get Sublimation Craft Kit.
This is another bundle. We did the Cricut Craft Kit last year. It was hugely successful. So as we're talking about doing things that worked well the first time, we're doing it again. This one is for sublimation crafters. So if you are a sublimation crafter or if you want to be a sublimation crafter, this is basically $1,000 worth of resources that we're selling for $29. And we've gathered together a whole bunch of sublimation content creators and resources. And we've put it all together into an easy to download bundle so that you can do more with sublimation crafting.
Yeah, it includes workshops, cheat sheets, ebooks, sublimation files, just so much stuff for sublimation. And I feel like it's good for wherever you are in your sublimation journey. Whether you are a beginner, haven't even started, don't even have a sublimation printer, this is for you. Or if you want to just grow your sublimation knowledge, learn about a few more techniques, this is also for you. So I feel like it could be for just about anyone.
And I mean, it's just such a killer deal. Such a good deal. We added it up. It's more than $1,000 worth of resources. I don't know. I think it's really, really great. We've had a great response to it so far. We only launched yesterday as of the time we're recording this podcast. So it has not been out that long and people are super excited about it. So if you want to get it, go to sublimationcraftkit.com. Again, it expires on January 31st, 2025. So if you're listening after, sorry, friends, but if you're listening before, you should definitely get it.
All right, let's continue on our goals discussion. And we're going to talk about a few different quarters here. So, quarter one, you want to start strong. So, quarter one task can prep you for further quarters, especially that super busy quarter four. And quarter one is the time to execute some of these goals because a lot of times it's the slowest time of the year for crafters, slowest time of the year for businesses. People do no spend Januaries. They're not spending money in your Etsy store. Like you are like, where did all these orders go? This is the time to prep and prepare your business, grow your business, and get ready to have an amazing Q3, Q4.
This is the perfect time to review your finances, to go through all of that data that we were talking about. Yes, a lot of Q1 prep can be done in Q4, but Q4 is crazy, right? So a lot of times Q1 prep happens in Q1. It happens once everything dies down after the holidays and you're like, okay, I'm not getting a ton of sales right now because everything is really slow. This is the time to focus. I can design new products. I can restock my inventory. I can prepare for my spring launches. It is the time that you have as like a reset time and take advantage of it because as the year goes on, it only gets busier. Is there a time that's slower than January? Absolutely not. There's no month slower than January, and then February, and then March. I mean, it really is a progression throughout the year. So take this time for what it is and don't be so worried about your sales. They're slow for all of us. It sucks. I understand. However, use this time to your advantage.
And whatever activities you do in quarter
Mm.
one, be sure to tie them back to the goals we've been talking about. So don't just randomly do things in quarter one. Make sure they apply to the goal that you're working on. Make sure they are going to further your business. You can totally get off track in quarter one. If you get off track in quarter one, you might spend the entire year off track. Let's just face it.
I do feel like something we should have talked about when we were talking about breaking down goals a little bit is you don't have to break down your goals evenly. So let's say you want to grow your Instagram by 1,200 people. I'm going back to this again, 100 people each month. It's going to be much harder to get that 100 people in January than it is going to be later in the year, just with the nature of how things work. People are on their devices. It's really hard for me, I think, to grow in like May and June because it's like everybody's getting off their devices. People are like, bye. I don't want to read a book. I don't want to go on the internet. I just want to go on vacation. We're not doing anything. So I do feel like, if you're like, okay, I want to gain 25 people in January and 50 people in February, that's setting your goals like that can work as well, makes them a little bit more achievable. And it doesn't make Q1 feel quite so, I don't know what the word is, terrible.
All right. And then moving into quarter two. So hopefully you've used quarter one to prepare for quarter two. So break those goals down. You have quarter two goals, and hopefully, whatever you've done in quarter one helps to boost up quarter two. So you might be doing spring product prep. You might be launching social media campaigns to support some of these goals. You might be doing content creation in order to get ahead for Q3 and Q4. So hopefully maybe some content creation to help you so you don't have to maybe create reels in quarter four. You could create them within quarter two.
Q1 and Q2 are also a lot of times, if you're doing craft fairs, that is when a lot of those craft fair applications go out. So if you're planning summer craft fairs, you're signing up for those in January, maybe February. I've already applied to like 3 craft fairs and they aren't even until at least May. And then once you hit end of Q2, a lot of times that's when holiday craft fairs are. So make sure that you're not like 3 weeks before Christmas going, I should do a craft fair. No, the prep for this is much, much sooner. And so this is also a great time to start to look at the events that you want to do, to start to, put together a portfolio if you want to get into an event you haven't been in before. That sort of thing. This is a great time to do that as well.
And I did want to mention, so we talked about quarter one and quarter two for most craft businesses being a downtime. However, maybe your craft business focuses on health and wellness. And January and February are your like months where everyone wants your products. You can adjust what we just said for whatever your business is. So if quarter three is your down quarter or quarter four is your down quarter, adjust what we've said. Just use the overall idea of quarters in your mind. When are you busy? When are you not busy? So you can sort of load up your goals into those non busy times so that during the busy times you make more money.
I think that's such a good piece of advice because maybe you sell flip flops and December is really bad for flip flops, but you make a lot of money during the summer months. So maybe your slow time is the fall or winter, those sorts of things. It's just really easy to adjust. But I feel like pretty much every business has a low time. I can't imagine there's a business that does the same exact amount of business year round. And so take that low time, take advantage of it. Don't work yourself to the bone, but take advantage of the fact that you have extra time to put into building your business in a way that you don't when you're just swamped with orders.
And I often take this as sort of a floating schedule because as YouTubers, our schedules are often weird. Quarter four is usually busy, but quarter one might get busy with product launches. We have no foresight of that. So there does need to be some flexibility in this. So something comes up, you have no foresight. You get a huge order of flip flops in November, and it's supposed to be your low time. Then you do have to be flexible within your goals. So maybe you shift what you were going to do during this month to next month when you don't have that huge order.
All right. So staying on track, which might be the hardest part about all of this, is not just sitting down in January, getting everything planned out, and then ignoring it for the next 11 months, because that's really easy for me to do. So you need check-ins. You have got to revisit your goals. You have to do it monthly or quarterly. There might be even some goals that you're checking in weekly. So, okay, I want to get 25 followers in January. How am I doing this first week? What can I do in the second week to make up the distance, that I didn't get any the first week? Okay, what can I do? Those sorts of things you may want to revisit depending on what your goals are. And if you don't revisit, you will not meet your goals. I can almost guarantee it, because without having them basically in front of your face all the time, you're just going to forget them and you're just not going to meet them.
And be sure to check in on what's working, what's not working. So if your goal is to grow your Instagram and January and February, you are not meeting that goal, maybe change up your strategy on Instagram. Do posts instead of reels, do more stories instead, and see if that helps move the needle in a different direction. If you just keep repeating the same things over and over again, you're going to repeat the same results most likely. Be sure to change things up once you do those check ins if it's just not working for you.
And don't be afraid to take a class or do a tutorial or all of these things. Like, I didn't get good at photography overnight. I cried a lot. I cried a lot until I finally took a class. After taking like 3 classes, and somebody finally explained a camera in a way that I understood, like how everything worked. And from then on, I was able to improve my skills massively. So maybe you take how to take better Instagram photos or how to make funny reels or whatever it is, product photos. Maybe it's time also to invest in yourself, in your business, by taking a class.
And be sure to celebrate small wins as well as big ones. I did want to say that here. So if my goal was to improve my YouTube videos or improve my photography, it's probably not going to get to all the way where I want it within one step. be sure to celebrate those small wins. My audio is a little bit better this week than it was last because my goal is to improve my video quality. Let's celebrate that. If you don't celebrate the small wins, you often feel like a failure as well, just because you didn't reach all the way to that goal within one step. It's going to be baby steps to get there, and be sure to celebrate the small wins along the way.
Yeah, I think it's the saying that, like, don't compare your middle to somebody else's end, right? I mean, Angie and I talk about this all the time. We are constantly trying not to compare ourselves to other people. I think as women, we are just conditioned to do it. And then being in a business where we're working with all of our friends also is very difficult. And so I think that as long as you understand that you're still on the journey, like, you're going to be a little bit more okay with where you are versus being like, man, I wish my photography was there. But like, that person had to take a lot of steps to get there. They weren't just magically good at photography or whatever it is. I look at Angie's YouTube channel and I'm like, oh, she's doing so much better than me. Well, yeah, she's been doing it a lot longer than me as well. So she has a lot more experience. She knows how to do it a lot faster than I do. And, she's gotten to the point too where things that people don't notice, she's okay with. I have a very hard time with things I know people won't notice, but I still have to make them right. Like, and it's the other day I did a video with my hair in a ponytail, and I was like, this is a very big step for me, not doing my hair before making a YouTube video, right? Because nobody cares. Nobody cares if my hair is in a ponytail. Am I teaching them what they need to know, right? So I think that sometimes, we can compare ourselves so much, like, and it's just so very, very difficult not to. But if we remember, okay, I'm only this far on this journey and I can get to where I want to be, it's just going to take some time.
Something I always have to remind myself of is that when you compare yourself to someone else, you're comparing yourself to a moving target. That person is also trying to improve, because it doesn't matter as human beings. No matter how good we get, we're constantly trying to improve on what we're doing, what we love. So they're also constantly trying to improve. They're getting more experience and improving just through the experience. And so when you compare yourself to that other person that's further than you, it's a moving needle. So I'm comparing myself, and this is my goal. I want to be just like this person, and they are improving in the entire time. So it's
So,
also comparing yourself to something that is unattainable.
yes. And if somebody else is much further down the line with you, they probably have a lot more help and a lot more money. Let's just be real. We have the ability to record a decent podcast because we both have giant lights sitting in front of us, headphones, expensive microphones, software. These are not things that necessarily you might have right off the bat. And I'm sure we'll go back and look at our first episodes of the podcast and be like, man, we have improved so much since we started this podcast, because we have in just this 1 year. I feel like I started listening to the first episode earlier today and I was like, oh, we have gotten so much better. We are really doing much better. So I think, yeah, that comparison game can be really deadly, but it's a journey.
And we wanted to wrap up this episode talking about accountability partners, because we're each other's best accountability partner. So if you don't know what an accountability partner is, it's basically someone to keep you accountable to your goals, your daily schedule, to keep you motivated. It's just a friend to help sort of boost you up. Now, I feel like it works best if the person is almost your competitor or sort of in the same field as you. Like, if my accountability partner was a lawyer, probably wouldn't work too well. But another crafter that does roughly the same thing I do, it works really well. They understand, we can bounce ideas off of one another. And I do think there has to be a trust factor there with each other. And that can be hard to find, but once you find it, it really clicks.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about accountability being also, if you're like, I'm going to make this by this date and you put it out there, but having somebody to walk through those goals with, to say, okay, I want to get I'm still short by 40 people, but I'm so close to this goal. Can you guys think of any ways that you can help, or that we can clear a roadblock or other things I could do, those sorts of things. And that's really hard to find. I'm not going to say that we're all out there just like with our crafty bestie doing all the things. We are really lucky to have this. But we've talked about this before, chat up other people at craft fairs. I've actually met some really, really great people at the last craft fair I did. The craft fair itself that I did was the worst one I've done so far, but the people I met at that craft fair are the best people I've met so far. So I had to look at that as a win because now I have other crafters locally that I can bounce ideas off of, that we can talk about fairs, we can talk about other stuff. I don't know if I have the necessarily this level of trust I have with Angie. I don't know if there's anybody I have the level of trust I have with Angie, but it is really great to start meeting other people. You know, one of them is a jewelry maker, for example. So we're not in the same necessarily craft, but I do feel like we could bounce market ideas off of each other. Or I could say, okay, Joanna, I am going to make this goal. And if I don't, yell at me or something. I don't know what the answer is, but just being accountable to her, knowing her that I had told her that goal, I think I would go for it.
So you may be able to start your own friend group for this, or this may be the point where you're gonna have to put yourself out there. Like we've talked about it's so hard to make friends as an adult, but just putting yourself out there, looking for craft fairs. That's a great place to find other crafters, but also might be community events, maybe or a painting with a twist type of place where people go together and paint and talk. Maybe you go to that and meet other crafters. I think there are a variety of ways. Just kind of get creative. Start putting yourself out there, putting feelers out there for other people that have the same interests. And I mean, you might have to just start this in your neighborhood Facebook group. Any other crafters want to grab a coffee and just like, swallow it and just forge ahead.
Yeah. I know that one of my friends, she's a craft blogger as well, she moved up here to Washington, but to a totally different area. She had no friends. And she's like, how am I going to make friends? And so she just put in the Facebook group, like, hey, I'm Alexis. Here's the things I like. Does anybody else want to be friends? And she's made like some of her best friends this way, just in her community Facebook group. And I'm like, that was so brave, but also, it's also easy, right? Like, hey, people like me want to hang out with me. Well, we like the same stuff. It is very hard for introverts, and I think crafters tend to be introverts. Not all introverts, but we tend to be, and so putting ourselves out there is very hard, but I wanna encourage you to, like, just try and make some friends that way.
I feel like you just have to keep in mind that probably everyone feels the same way you do.
Yeah,
Everyone is like, I don't know how to make friends. I don't know how to find the people with the same interests. They all feel that way. So they're going to be appreciative to you for taking the first step.
I will tell a quick personal story before we wrap up, in that the first craft fair that I did, again, I sell bookish products. The first craft fair that I did, this woman was looking at a keychain that said "Book Club Babe," and she goes, "I wish I was a book club babe. I wish I had a book club." And I was like, "You wanna start a book club?" And now we're in a book club together. We've found some other bookish people, and I'm finally making friends. And so it's one of those things where you're just like, you have to put yourself out there, and it's hard, and it's difficult, especially you may have a difficult personality. I know, like, I can be a little rough and tumble sometimes for a few people. I say what I think a lot of the times, and some people don't like that. And so, I think sometimes we think nobody's gonna wanna be friends with me, but you're gonna find your people. You can find your people.
This has been an amazing conversation about organizing the year ahead. And I hope you use some of the tips that we have offered throughout this podcast.
Planning is such a powerful tool for staying on top of everything in your business, but also keeping your business profitable and your life balanced, because you have to put in that rest time. We're just going to keep saying that. And remember, your plans are meant to be flexible. You can always adjust as you go.
So sit down, start mapping out your 2025. You can do it. You can use these tips to do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Get those big picture ideas down first, then break them down into smaller goals.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have enjoyed this episode, we'd love if you would leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. I hadn't checked it in a while, and we have like a bunch of reviews over there on iTunes. And I was like, "What? Thank you so much, everyone." It made me so happy to read all of those this morning. All of these reviews help us reach more crafty entrepreneurs just like you.
And we want to hear from you. So we now have crafting camps, social on Instagram as well as Facebook. And we'd love to hear from you on those social channels. What are your big goals for 2025? Share them with us. Tag us at crafting camps if you want to do it that way. We want to be able to cheer you on.
Be sure to join us for our next episode, where we will be chatting with Chloe Stanley, who is the founder of 100K Artist. She hosts amazing workshops, and we are excited to chat with her.
Until then, keep crafting and we'll see you next time.